Okay, so this is the thing. We are so deep in who we are as humans that we haven't yet integrated who we are as eternal creators in source. And the issue with that is this experience is so full of duality and polarity and contrast that we have to anchor that, especially in the most difficult times, because those are where we hold the most emotion. And emotion can either drive or discourage the human spirit. And we're going to need equal parts spiritual hygiene, spiritual connection, and equal parts human mastery and human observation to be able to compete well here, to be able to co-create new experiences. And I say this because, when we go through a karmic journey and we are unaware that we're creating at the level of thought, emotion, and action, it can be this split experience that we have as we move through our life's journey. But once we do become aware, it is imperative that both sides are integrated. And when it comes to, I've said before, like, we're operating in our ego in an imbalanced way. But I want to clarify that imbalanced, sometimes I've referred to it, and I'm actually referring to like karmic in a karmic way, in a negatively karmic way. Or I may have used it and I'm speaking as it relates to integration in an unintegrated way. And so when you talk about, these negative experiences that make us feel unsupported, alone, and separate, the unintegration, the lack of integration, the disconnect in integration at that point is more of us understanding that our true identity is source, and ego is how we express ourselves as individuals, but can also be just as easily the place where we fall into separation. And so this is why it's so important to distinguish our ego when these difficult times arise, because that ego mind will try to convince us that, I shouldn't need to feel what I already know. But in fact, during those difficult times is when we most need to tap in. We most need to assess how we're feeling that day in that moment about that decision, because through the understanding of those feelings is how we can distinguish how we're identifying with whatever the experience is. And that's really important because our feelings are not only indicators, but when we are able to tune into them and we are able to tap in at lower brain waves and feel the spirit that is within us and feel the presence of, God as we are connected to God in that conscious connection, then we're able to shift our heart space. Okay. And we have to validate those feelings, because from that place, we're not, quote, leaning on our own understanding, because we think that we know better than what we're feeling. Okay. It always has to be interconnected. And so we tend to get so deep into these experiences, as humans, right? But solidifying, and I said this in my last video about stabilizing at the level of identity, solidifying our identity in being source embodied, which is that eternal creator that's interconnected to everything at an emotional place, right? Understanding that no matter how much of an individual you are at the level of ego, as a soul, you're always connected within a collective and always connected to God. Understanding that the feelings can be so powerful that they may temporarily override what you know. Okay, so we're going to want to meet ourselves at those feelings every time versus abandoning or avoiding what comes up without this sense of there being a weakness in doing so. there being an inadequacy in doing so, right? Not good enough. Okay. That is going to actually delay and disconnect the process even more. Okay. And so this type of behavior may be running unconsciously in the background where there's not enough grace emotionally to be able to pivot into the next highest vibrational thing. Anchoring that you're an eternal creator also means being mindful of what you're creating internally and acknowledging and validating what that looks like. Because the sustainability of the creations won't only be in knowing your limitlessness as source embodied, it's going to have to also come from managing and integrating what it looks like within your humanity. Not only understanding the vulnerabilities, but also the gifts of your humanity. Self-awareness is going to be the key to self-mastery, not from a place of improvement, but from a place that allows you to understand what you need to co-create your version of what would be the best outcomes or the best co-creative experiences, which in a realm of learning is all God actually wants and what your soul came here to experience.